We
Oh,
are live. We
it
are
says it.
live. Yes, we are live. What is going on, everybody? We're just kind of winging it tonight because we put out a book today, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I have
volume.
one.
He
Well, he
has
hammers that
one.
way.
Yeah, that's volume one of Welcome UFO People. It includes all 20 issues that we put out, plus the 4 weekly benders that we put out. And it includes a forward from our good buddy, Steve Berg, who I know Steve's watching right now. What's up, Steve?
Hi, Steve.
Um,
Steve.
but yeah, it's man, this has been 2 years in the making. We started this in September of 2022. Do
That's
you
awesome.
do you remember that first time, Todd? And before we go on any further, we've got the great Jonathan Dodd with us today because Jonathan did a variant cover of the first volume that will be available exclusively through him. So if you want a copy of that, which we're still there's still a logistical issue that we're working on, but that should be solved very soon. But
I
if you want to get that variant cover, you got to go directly to Jonathan. You got to go to the cons that he's at, and you got to get it from him.
Come see
it's
me.
beautiful too. I highly
Yeah.
recommend tracking it down. And I did get an
Yes.
update. You'll have those books by the weekend, so it'll be
Nice.
they'll
Okay.
be available through your website or through the cons, wherever you're going to be. However you do it these days,
Yeah.
Jonathan.
I might do both. Depends on what the response is, I guess.
Yeah.
Totally,
When I
totally.
did the Veggie Man comic, I had people just like out of nowhere like sending me Instagram DMs and it was like, "Hey, give me that. Give me that."
That's awesome. Was that the first comic you've done in a while?
Yeah, I guess I mean I've been doing like little comics like my entire life.
Yeah.
But that was like the first one that I actually got kind of, I set it out into, like the layout. And I mean, you're familiar with that, all in like InDesign and stuff. And
Oh
then,
yeah.
did like the page count and then had it like sent to the printer and like was at the printer while it was coming off the press. And I was like looking at it and like making sure it looked cool.
That's the
So yeah,
best.
it was,
That's the
it was like one of my first experiences with like actual comic making. So yeah.
That's so exciting. That's really cool. So you got to work with the local printer then?
Yeah.
That's it. That's even better. Yeah, a lot of times these days your printers are very far away from where you're doing it. I just recently found a local printer in Delaware that is amazing that I'm going to use for everything moving forward, called Studio B. And yeah, I just got the first books back from them. These ones, which is the new issue of Dreamscapes, and they came
Ooh,
out
yeah.
really pretty, and like he used actual newsprint in there, so the
Oh,
color,
nice.
yeah, which it's not
That
a
comic
thing.
feel.
Yeah, it's not like it's crazy that he had that and he offered like he had to hand cut them down to size and everything for me. It's very, very nice. But yeah, local printers are the
Beautiful.
way to go. That's awesome. Did you draw it all on the iPad or was this all traditionally drawn or?
I did all the sketching in my sketch pad. I actually had like a booklet. I got like 4 pieces of paper, folded them together,
Hell yeah.
stapled them, and then just started like freehanding it.
That rules.
And then like I wanted to kind of like challenge myself to just be like, just put whatever out there, just draw it and then see what happens. And so I didn't change any of my sketches really. Like
That's
I was
awesome.
just like going crazy with it. And then yeah, so then I would import them into a digital space in Procreate on the iPad and then do all my inks there.
Yeah,
And it was
that
just black
rules.
and white, so just kept it like a black and white comic. But then I printed it on green paper, so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yes, colored paper is the way to go. No, that's pretty much exactly how I do all of Welcome UFO People that's in this book here. And for the next chunk of things that we're going to do, I'm actually going to do the reverse where I'm going to work it'll probably be all traditional except for colors. I'll go to Procreate for coloring and whatnot unless we
Nice.
decide to keep it black and white. But I've gotten the bug for just using a nib and a brush recently, and just like the sound of a nib scratching against Bristol board has been very soothing to me these days. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I stopped that felt like work for me for a long time, because that's what I did, was I used traditional tools, and then I like drew less personally that way. And when I got the iPad, I kind of did all of my like personal drawing on the iPad, because that's not what I used for work. And then when I use the iPad for work, now I feel a little bit, I'm using it too much. So like it's very nice to go back to traditional media, even if it's just in the beginning and still finishing it digitally. It's nice not to look
Yeah.
at the screen for an extra hour a day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just get that like textile feel, as you're
Yeah.
sketching out. And
And
I feel like I sketch a whole lot better just on paper anyway.
totally. Dude,
And then if you
yeah, I
can do your
completely
inks
agree.
later, then that works out good. But
Yeah. I've
yeah.
been two things that really hit me recently that I heard someone talk about was because I go back and forth. I love digital. Like I kind of hate when people talk shit on digital art and like, talk like the only
Mhm,
way is traditional and the authentic. But
mhm.
someone said something that hit me really hard, and I do feel it. And it's that when you're doing traditional styles and you're using the same tools that the people we grew up loving are using, you're carrying on a lineage. Like if you're using the same nib that Bill Watterson used drawing Calvin and Hobbes, you're
Yeah.
part of a history. The tool of an iPad and a stylus and everything, that wasn't available. Like they may have used it if it was, but you're taking yourself out of that like lineage in a certain way. And that kind of really hit me, because I was like, damn, he's right. Not anybody that I loved growing up made anything digitally. So like it kind of feels weird to only make things digitally. And like, so
Mhm.
I've been kind of going back and forth. But the other thing I've been really trying to do when I'm not working digitally, because I feel like the biggest thing, like what makes you feel like you're cheating sometimes when you're working digitally, at least me, is the undo button. You can just
Yeah.
undo.
Yeah.
So recently when I'm working traditionally, I'm just going straight to inks. Like I'm just dipping a nib in ink and I'm drawing, no pencils, no roughing anything out. I have a loose story I want to tell, and I'm just going panel to panel, inking it as I go. And I'm drawing like I've never drawn before. Like it still looks like my drawings, but it's, to me, I'm like, oh, this looks completely different. And it's just because of that, like you're kind of, these tools are limiting in certain ways, and like figuring
Mhm.
out how to surpass those limitations. You don't have to like have that battle when you have an iPad and you have just endless options. When you just have black and white and this little metal fucking thing that was created, God knows when was the nib invented, like who knows, right? Like it's so old and archaic, and like
The
it's
quill.
rusty and like it makes this horrible noise when it drags across. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how drawing, this feels good. It feels like aggressive or something. I don't know. But and like Teddy, he just wants to use it all the time now. Like he's just like, what is that thing? It looks weird. I'm like,
The worst part though is when you make a mistake and you go to hit the undo button and you
it's
realize you're working in traditional medium.
it's not there. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I've hit a few of those where I'm like, okay, I guess this is either now a big black spot, or I'm gonna have to, bust out the white out and see what I can do with this. But that's kind of part of
Yeah.
the fun too, is like getting yourself in those corners and then working them out in a creative way that you wouldn't really have to do in another medium and stuff like that. But yeah, sorry, we just kind of took that over with art nerd talk there for a minute.
Yeah, but that's what we're doing, man. We're just like nerding out in here and stuff here because like we put out a book, I just honestly it's just great to talk to people like because I haven't talked to really people because I isolate myself, but uh I'm the writer on the writer end of this thing, and I can tell you I probably have the easiest job, although to do it you kind of got to learn on the fly. So I remember when we first had the idea to do this, and we had met in 2022 through Instagram. We were admirers of each other, and you know the thing about me is when we become good friends, I just send you random images of things. That's if love languages are a thing, that's my thing. And the one thing that I would do with Todd is I would send over just like random sketches from UFO cases and stuff. I remember the last one that I sent, and I've tried to find this and I can't find it anywhere. So it's kind of like an anomaly, but there's this one Spanish case, and it's called the Army of the Humanoids, because there's this one Spanish account of this guy witnessing a UFO land in this army of really short beings just like getting out and just walking out of this craft. And we kind of just got talking about it. It's like, hey, what if we made a comic? You know, like we gave ourselves the challenge of doing 5 panels, because in many ways you can kind of summarize a good UFO case, I think, in 5 panels. There are certainly some
Yeah.
that were difficult, that part of me wants to do a series where we just like we take like one 5-panel issue and we put in an additional panel or two for the ones that we did, that for things that we left out. But it's like, okay, I dig this challenge.
Yeah.
And what really inspired the first one was this: there's a sketch of so the first installment of Welcome UFO People is the Paulo Caetano Silveira case, which is a Brazilian case. This guy driving along the road, he gets abducted, but what's fun and whimsical about it is that he gets abducted by beings that are like 11 inches tall. Their spaceship is like 3 feet in diameter and stuff. So he's like shrunk down. But in the original Flying Saucer Review article for it, there is this one sketch of Paulo Caetano, and it's bare bones sketch of him standing under this light coming from the ceiling inside this craft, and there's a platform above it, and there's this little being walking across it, and I'm like, this is whimsical as hell. I think Todd could kill this, you know. So I'm like, all right. So we started talking, and like, you know, we could try this, and if, you know, it becomes too much, or, you know, if we're not enjoying it, we could just stop. And then we made 20 of these things.
Yeah, I mean, these stories, they lend so well to the medium. Like it's kind of crazy like how well it blends.
Yeah, no, I think it's built in for sure. And I think the 5-panel, one of the things I liked from the beginning about the idea of the 5-panel challenge or the format in that way is that it almost gives it that like Albert Rosales feel, where it's just like a couple sentences for each encounter, and like you get to be really frustrated sometimes where you're like, that's it, and then you get to be like kind of a little bit more open-ended and interpretive with them at the same time with that lack of information. So I like that start, but there's definitely a few in there where I feel like we could do full 24-page comics about those encounters. Like there's some things that we covered in 5 panels that we could probably do, you know, a full book on pretty easily.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just in like going over like the ones that we have done, like and just thinking on them, you know, I remember coming to you with the Dan Duggleby encounter, because it's just the great thing about UFO research is that you stumble upon gems if you know where to look for them, if you know kind of the sources that you can really dive into to really just find those gems. And I was perusing through the humanoid catalog, the Humcat, which is a David Webb, I think Ted Blocher operation. Those two guys, and like before Albert Rosales, these guys, they collected all of these humanoid cases, put them on index cards, and eventually years later they were scanned into PDF files that you can find on the QFOS website now. And I was so like, long story short here, like all of the stories that we covered in these 20 issues of Welcome UFO People, they came directly from Our Strange Skies. They were all covered on it. and I was researching a series on these on this flap from 65 to 67, and there's just this weird case about this man named Dan Duggleby, and he's out hunting in Bozeman, Montana, and he sees this large rocket just descend, land not far from him. And he sees these little robots getting out, collecting soil samples and stuff. And it's like, what the hell is this? Why does nobody talk about this? And that, like, that whimsical, and the way that Todd did it, Todd put a spin on it to where it is like the most adorable little robots that you've ever seen, just like going out collecting
course.
samples. And like that, I think right there solidified what this project was. And it's kind of what I did with the podcast, in that there are stories that deserve to be told that haven't been told for a long time, and probably were never told in the mediums like this. And it kind of becomes a privilege at a certain point to be able to tell those stories, because, when it comes to UFOs, what's hot right now is not what was hot back then. What was hot back then was a lot different. So in in any in, in any event, like, welcome UFO people is just kind of it's become a fantastic love letter to this topic,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I love most about it, especially, going back over these issues. It's just like the style that we've done it in. I love that paper feel to it and everything. But I don't know, Todd, you have all the hard work, man. You have to
Yeah.
do all the heavy lifting.
I won't take that. So I'll answer or respond to that in the way that, like, I respond to a lot of, or I give this advice to a lot of young illustrators or creatives in general. And I think it applies to you, Rob, is that, yeah, it might not take you as long to bang out a 5-panel script as it takes me to draw those 5 panels, right? Like, I might be putting a lot more hours into those 5 panels in the making of the comic, but the only reason you can write it that fast is because of the years and years you spent reading this information and, like, researching all this information. It's not like I could read this stuff and digest it and break it down into 5 panels. Like, the reason that you can do that is because of all of the work you've put into prior to this project. And that's the same way, like, when kids are having trouble, or younger creatives are having trouble charging for their artwork, I'm like, you're not just charging for the 5 hours you're sitting there designing that logo. You're charging for the 25 years of creative experience it took you to get to this place. Like, you're charging for all the time, the college, all the hours of staying up and, like, practicing. All of that stuff is part of what you're billing for. And I think it's the same thing for what you're doing. Like, you put in the work. The physical writing of the script may not be too much, but the other thing that I think is, like, so special about what we did, and kind of what you hinted on with the whimsy of it and whatnot, and, like, what we got to bring out of these cases is, like, so I told you a second ago or a little bit ago that my kid is getting into UFOs these days. He's super into science. He wants to be an engineer, and some of the kids YouTube stuff has started to talk a lot about UFOs and just, like, the search for extraterrestrial life, just very SETI, very basic, like, nuts and bolts material, but he's super into it, and he knows Dad's into weird stuff, so he started to talk to me about it, right? So, like, it's been really fun. I have some specific questions for you, Rob, that I'm going to ask you in a minute, that he has for me to
That's
ask you.
awesome.
But it's been really fun because he's been asking me about, like, local Delaware cases, and I'll just look up on, like, New Fork or whatever, like, then I'll be like, oh, let's go to the Brandywine Valley State Park because there was a sighting over here, and we'll go for a hike and be, like, looking for aliens or whatever, and, like, just using it as an excuse to go on nature walks with the kid. But that has just led him to asking a million questions. And when I got these books in the other day, I didn't hesitate about, like, giving it to him and being like, here, look, this is the comic that I've done with somebody who's, like, done a lot of research about this stuff, and, like, these are some weird cases that we can sit here and read through, because, like, it's it's kind of all ages material in certain ways, and, like, it's cool to see him read these things and find some of the humor in it, and some of like he gets creeped out by some of it for sure, and there's still some of that like that fear, but like at the same time, like his most recent exploration, right? We went down to this little I don't even think it's a state park. I think it's just like a little designated nature reserve, nature spot or whatever. And we were walking around the creek and whatnot, and he was asking me about like lights in the skies and all those things. I'm telling him about orbs and how like, you know, orbs are kind of like seen in ghost experiences and Bigfoot experiences and UFO experience. And then he's like, "Dad, give me your camera." I'm like, "What?" And like he starts taking, there's like a river that's flowing pretty hard, or a creek. I don't know what kind of water it was, but he starts taking a picture of it, and there's this little yellow, like it kind of looks like a leaf, but when you zoom in on the picture, it looks like it's like floating on top of the water. And he's just like convinced, like, "Dad, I got a UFO picture. We had a UFO experience." And I'm like, "We had a UFO experience. This is awesome." And it was like the whole family. It was me and Allie and June, our, you know, little sister and everything. And like he is so stoked. And like, yeah, so I have been really enjoying kind of getting back into UFOs via his interest in them. And like he'll just be like, "Dad, have you ever heard of any interactions with cat aliens?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's something called Catman that my buddy has talked about," and that's about the extent of my information. So he's like, "Dad, you need to ask your friends about more cat alien experiences." And then today he asked me about oh man, what was it? Oh, aliens that look like fish. And I was like, "I don't know, that's a different one, but I'm sure it's happened somewhere in the annals of UFO history, and I know the person to ask."
You gotta ask your Uncle Rob.
Exactly. But yeah.
Oh man, yeah. You know what? One of the first like artistic forays into the subject that I ever remember reading is a graphic novel from, it's about 12 years old now. It's called The Extraterrestrial Compendium. It was written by a guy named Pat Lee, who I believe is a comic book writer or artist. I'm not exactly sure. But in it is like, it's kind of the malevolent, like the thing about it is like it'll break down all of these aliens, and it's like kind of like your modern take on like aliens. You'll see, you know, like rays and stuff like that in it, but it also gives you a like a malevolent scale in it that I wasn't like you know anticipating. I was like, "Oh, these aliens are evil, straight
That's
up evil."
so funny, dude. So we it was first week of school, and June it was her last day of her first week of school today, and Allie took her to the Five and Below, the little dollar store place, to pick out a little present or whatnot. And Teddy was sick today, and so she brought him home this book that was from this five. It was $5 from this Five and Below, and it's like Children's World's Greatest Mysteries. It was like one of those old school, you know, has Bigfoot. It's like the table of contents is literally like aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, Atlantis, like all the
Gateway
classics.
books.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And like I'm looking through it with him, and I'm like, this is different than what I remember. Like, there's a whole section on like the trickster phenomenon of the UFO, and like they go through pretty specific cases, like the Pascagoula cases in there, and like it's a little bit more specific than I remember the books being growing up. And I'm like, this is kind of interesting. But then I start reading it, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this whole thing is written by AI. I'm pretty sure this is like one of those books that's just like, that's why this is $5, is because this was not written by a human, I don't think. But it was a very, very interesting to see those books like in that type of, like, you know, those type of stores are nothing but kids. Like, it's just trash you buy for kids. So like it's awesome that those are still the topics that kids want from trash stores. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's been the other book that we've been reading a lot. This is my little Teddy book corner. This is a really fun one. It's called We Are Definitely Human, and it's just about these aliens that come here and pretend to be human and do a lot of really, you know, make you realize how silly the things humans do by being aliens and trying to act like they're human.
That's
But yeah,
great. I love that.
totally.
I love that.
It's been a fun. We're already like fully decorated for Halloween. Both my kids are like fully into it this year, and like, yeah,
Nice.
all about the spooky and the weird stuff.
Do they have their costumes picked out yet?
Creeper and Rainbow Unicorn Princess. Creeper is a Minecraft character. If you're not up on your Minecraft characters, he's the one that explodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was picturing like Creep Show, like the
no.
Creep. I can't remember. Is he the Creep?
Picture,
Yeah, Creep Show, the Creep.
a
Yeah.
creeper is like so it's an 8-bit pig that is stood up on its hind legs and painted green. If that makes you give you any kind of visual image.
Sounds like a cryptid.
It could be. It definitely could be.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But dude,
That's
so
wild.
Jonathan, are you doing to do more comics now? Like now that you did
Yeah.
Veggie Man, like do you have something on the
Definitely.
docket right now?
Definitely. Actually, yeah, me and my brother have been writing a comic or a graphic novel series for about a year now.
Whoa, that rules.
Yeah, so we're getting like right up on the end of our first draft. So I don't want to talk like too much about it, but
Understandably.
like, we're like pretty happy with where it's going. It does have some alien vibes, and is kind of a little bit inspired by a pretty famous alien encounter. So we're going to we've obviously kind of expanded the idea and gone a little off the rails with it. So it's probably not as noticeable, but yeah, we're really excited about it, and that'll probably be the next like big project. I do want to do like some more like smaller like zine style comics here in the future though too.
That's awesome. Are you writing and drawing it together, or are you just writing it together and you're handling all the art, or how's the
I'm
workload
going to be doing
towards
the
it?
art. I don't know. We work really well together. He's very, very creative, very inspired by a lot of, like these like weird cases, and he's a big gamer too. So he's got a lot of like, immersive game ideas and stuff like that. So I'm just like, sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm going to draw that. But yeah, so no, we work really well together. We've been writing, like I said, for about a year now, and like coming up on a year. And I've been doing like tons of sketches and like concept art and character designs and stuff like that. And it's been like a pretty wild experience, actually, like just realizing how much goes into telling a story on paper like that. It's wild.
Comics are the most labor intensive creative thing I've ever done, and I think that might exist. Like when you really break it down, like, and here's like kind of the fucked up part is like stop and think about how long it takes you to draw a page of comics, right? Like one page, like one Welcome UFO People, right? It's read in 30 seconds. Like no matter how many words are on that page, like it could take you 2 weeks to draw a page. Some like not usually that long, but it could take hours and hours to draw a page, and then it's read in like 30 seconds. Like I think about that sometimes. Like I'll burn through even like a smaller graphic novel. Like I just got done this one that is really good, and it's like a thin boy, it's not too thick or anything, but like I probably read it in 3 hours or something, and this is probably like months of this person's life, like months and months of this person's life, and I'm like, oh, that was 2 hours and gone. And like, yeah, but I think that's kind of part of the magic of comics. I think that is part of what makes them like so special, is that they're a labor of love. And like even when you make it in comics, like people that I know that have like a comics career, like like it's not like they're still doing a lot of other hustling, and like it's something that people do just because they really love it for the most part. And like I think it's really special medium because of that intensity, and I think it does have like its own kind of magic because of that, especially when you're dealing with these weird subjects. And like it really does, like you said earlier, Jonathan, lend itself to them perfectly.
Right. Yeah.
Totally. That's cool. I know Rob was throwing an idea at me earlier that I'm excited about that might be that. So yeah, that would be a very labor intensive project, but very well worth it. Like I think that's one of those ones that we should definitely make happen.
It's a graphic novel or a comic?
Definitely more graphic novel. Very UFO related.
Nice.
It's it's gonna it's gonna take a couple years, but I think it'll be so unique and it's so interesting that it's just going to be so much fun to do. But yeah, it was kind of an idea that came to me to um one of my loves when it comes to humanoid cases is the 1973 Year the Humanoids report, and I've always wanted to do something with it, so we're gonna take a stab at this and see. My writing ability is it's gonna have to upgrade quite a bit to really make it happen, but that's something I'm willing to take on. Jonathan, we also need to talk about you. You also did the cover and some of the sketches in Lyle Blackburn's new book on the Lake
Yep.
Worth
Oh, that's
Monster.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was
cool.
a really cool project. He actually so I've seen him a couple times at like conventions and stuff, and we've kind of talked in passing. Um, and then this last Monster Fest, we were hanging out in the bar, and he just started talking to me about you know the Lake Worth monster, the Goat Man. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with that story, but basically in 1969, there's this couple. They were kind of parked down by Lake Worth in Texas, and Goat Man came out of the woods and tried to take the woman out of the car. And so evidently the guy kind of tussled with it and ended up, pulling out of there really fast. And evidently there was these big old scratch marks down the side of his car there. And yeah, they went into the local diner and like reported it, and like it got huge media coverage, and like it was like people would go out like for months and months afterwards, like monster hunting. So it was like one of those accounts where like it just ignited everybody in the community, and like all the bored teenagers just like grab bats and stuff, and like we're like riding around like Worth looking for this monster to try to beat it up. And then it kind of like takes a little bit of like a weirder turn, because then it kind of turns from a goat man into like more Sasquatch
Oh,
kind
weird.
of stuff. So I mean, it's a little bit murky, and we tried to kind of capture that too with a lot of the illustrations, kind of keep them, in the shadows, and like maybe you don't really know what it actually is. Could it be, it's got this like weird wisp of hair or something? Maybe someone could, mistake that for a goat horn or something like that. So just being kind of ambiguous with it. But yeah, it was a really fun project to work with him on. And he's like a really cool dude, really laid back, and all about just being creative. So I mean, like he's a cool dude.
That's awesome.
Another like really cool thing about that before we move on, but he reached out to me and was like, so I'm in touch with this the original eyewitness's son, and the son remembers his dad like drawing a picture of the goat man that he saw, so like an eyewitness sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he had like a series of moves in his life. He always kept it, but he had a series of moves in his life where he just lost the drawing. So Lyle hooked me up with him, and he, I had a couple phone calls with him and talked to him, and got like a description, and then did like a recreation of his dad's drawing for the book. So
Wow.
yeah, it
That's
was so much
awesome.
fun. It was really cool. It was like one of the first times I've actually sat down with like an eyewitness, or someone who knows an eyewitness, and
Yeah.
tried to like do like an eyewitness sketch. So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. What was
That is
that like?
awesome.
That's really cool.
It was
I've
really cool. He was a
yeah.
nice guy too, and I mean he talked a lot about his dad, and how his dad was like an immigrant from I think Bavaria. Like his family's like from like Bavaria, Austria,
Mm.
and like I think he was actually in a concentration camp as well.
Oh, damn.
Like yeah, like as a very small kid, and yeah, I mean that was pretty strange. But he was talking about how maybe that experience kind of like primed his dad for like seeing like really horrific things like a goat man, which I
Yeah.
thought was
No, I
like
mean,
kind of like a pretty cool idea actually. Like
It's a page right out of Dr. Jeffrey Kripal's book, as far as trauma being a key element to all of these
Yeah.
experiences. That usually the experiencers have some form of massive trauma, like in their
Mhm.
past lives or current lives or something along those
Mhm.
lines. And not only for like paranormal experiences, but like religious experiences and spiritual experiences. That trauma seems to be either like a not like a trigger, but like a factor, something that's always
Right.
there. And that's
Right.
super interesting to me. It's one of those things that like I hear, and especially from someone like Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, who like I really respect his work, and I'm like, man, wow, that's kind of a bummer, but it makes a lot of sense, and like is very, but it's also
Yeah.
interesting because you have things and instances like Braden's work, or things like the Philip experiment, where there's these things that hopeful expectancy and playfulness and a sense of community also is a positive factor for having these different spiritual or paranormal
Mhm.
experiences. So it's interesting that both ends of the spectrum seem to be needed. Like it's like the paradox is what's really important, that you need the trauma and you need the like kind of communal playfulness absurdity of it. And that's gonna, it's interesting that that push and pull seem to be equally as
Yeah.
important. But yeah, that's super, dude. I've never sat down with an eyewitness or anything. Like the closest thing I've come is redrawing these things that Rob rewrites, and like that
Mhm.
are from years and years ago and have no like. So that's a whole other level of interaction with someone like that. That's really cool. That's
And not
definitely.
only did we get like a really cool drawing out of it, like I think it was almost kind of like therapeutic for him too, because he
Yeah,
would
it's
Mhm.
gotta be.
like he was like really like kind of caught up in it when he was a kid. Like he would always ask his dad to tell me the story,
Mhm.
of the goat man that attacked you and mom, and it was kind of like a legend in their family. Like
Yeah,
aside from the Lake Worth monster legend, it
yeah,
was like it took on its own life with them, and then I think he was like really upset that he lost the actual drawing
yeah,
that his dad had done. So it was almost like what I said. It's kind of therapeutic for him to like sit down and retell it and pass that on, and then like have something at the end to
I
kind of
love
like
that.
remember it.
Yeah, no,
So
that's
that was cool.
beautiful.
Like I got a lot of satisfaction out of that project. I loved it, man. It was so much fun. It was so cool.
That's
That's awesome.
awesome. That is amazing. I've had just from doing the podcast, I've actually had the children of two witnesses from two different cases actually send messages, and I remember one was George Kowalczyk's son, and George Kowalczyk was
Oh, actually, I think I know.
involved. Yeah, and he was involved in this. He had this Bigfoot UFO case that happened in his
Yeah,
backyard in Pennsylvania, and um, there were elements of like kind of like demonic possession at one point too. It's a very
Mm,
weird case, but
wild.
uh, his son reached out and he's like my dad would never talk about it, but like there were a lot of people around that said it did happen and stuff, and even interviewing Stan Gordon, Stan wouldn't talk completely about it. There were certain elements that he would kind of keep to himself,
mm,
um because like he investigated that case live in the field, and yeah, there were definitely some disturbing elements, but this was back in June. I did an episode way back called The Unspeakable Secret, and I found this story while perusing Patrick Huey's Field Guide to Extraterrestrials. There's a section in it on this like mantoid being, and it's kind of when you look at the sketch of the being, it's kind of funny because it almost looks like, I get the vibe that this manted being could probably get down to Cotton Eye Joe or something like that. It's just like kind of has that vibe to it.
Love it.
And you go and you read the story, and it's like, holy crap, this is like really intense. And it was a story that I think was carried in like the Washington Post or something like that. And all I did for the episode was, the story was just so well laid out. I just kind of did a reading of it, and the witness's daughter sent me an email, saying, my dad basically kind of became a shell of himself when this story came out. He moved to the Midwest and, just kind of, um, you know, kept on until he passed away like a few years ago. But she was appreciative of, covering a story like that because it's not like it wasn't, even though it was covered in a major news outlet, it wasn't huge or anything like that. But it was so well written, and like the guys, as a white collar worker having gone through an abduction experience and how that affected him. Like it was just really well written for the time. And yeah, it's always cool when people do reach out and say, "Hey, yeah, like that was my dad, and this is what happened and stuff." But yeah, no, that's yeah, there's a couple of cool things toward the tail end of this
Definitely
podcast.
brings kind of a humanity to it as well. Like it brings some humanity back into the stories. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes you'll be reading a story and it's almost kind of like
Mm,
you forget that there's actual people involved in it.
yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
Like,
I
it's so far removed from you, and especially if it's a case that happened like in the 60s or 70s or something like
mhm,
that. It's like almost like reading a comic book. So
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think all this stuff gets if you listen to it or read it too much, it becomes like a dull hum and none of it sticks out anymore. And it's like anything else, like you got to take breaks and like listen to
yeah.
like even like I still consume so much in like podcast material and stuff because of what I do and the nature of sitting at a drawing table for so many hours a day. And I like took a big long break from listening to like much paranormal or any like I kept up with a few things here and there that I always keep up with, but like just kind of stopped because it was all that hum was happening where it's just everything sounds the same and everything. But like it is that type of thing when you go back to it. It's like yeah, I think I'm the only one. It's like if you really enjoy smoking weed and then you stop for a while and you go back to it, you're like, oh yeah, that's what I really enjoyed. It works again, right? Like it's been very similar
yeah,
experience. But like when I started listening and I started having to do work for like the Halloween stuff that I do for the coffee company and everything. And, all that stuff has to be produced in the summer to get it ready for so I'm starting to like, okay, I'll start trying to listen to some ghost stories and stuff. And it's funny because
mhm,
it does hit differently after you take a break. And even I remember I was listening to, I don't remember what podcast it was, but it was just some random ghost story podcast, and someone's telling a very, very typical ghost story about how they had an experience when they were little and it was this fucked up experience and they thought they were the only one experiencing it. And then like 20 years later, when they're in their 30s, they start talking like their parents pass away and they're talking to their siblings, and all of their siblings had the same experience, and they like bonded over talking about having that same the paranormal experience or haunting experience when they were growing up. And I was like, in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's the reason that happened. The whole reason you had that like haunting was to bring this little, connection that happened with like your family eventually. Like it was just a whole thing that like led to this communal interaction. And, that's not how they took it at all. And that's probably not, but I would not have thought that if I didn't take a break and like just have, gives you a fresh perspective on these things. And like, it's like, oh, okay, there's a lot of, a lot of good to come out of like not constantly consuming the same thing over and over again. And
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
like, and you know what helps when you don't keep producing the same thing over and over again, when you just say, hey, I don't need to do this anymore, we could just take a
Yeah.
break here.
How's life been post the podcast for you so far?
It's been a huge stress off my back, it really has. Because and I've said this on a few other podcasts, the nature of that kind of content creation requires you to just kind of constantly be putting things out in order to kind of maintain whatever like hold that you have on a certain type of market, which is now oversaturated as hell. Like, and like, I remember, man, when I first started 2017, 2018, um, you'd get you'd get big numbers within like the first like 7 hours, and now I'm getting like I was getting a third of those numbers. So it's like, yeah, we don't need to do this anymore. I know we're good here. I think we've done a lot of these stories. Like, there's only so many stories, and like those Kryptonite guys can just keep going. Like, they can cover them all. You know, they're kind of like, I consider them the Pokemon of humanoid encounters, because like
That's really good. Yeah.
I think they are trying to get them all, but you know, when it's just not doing it anymore, you know, try out different things. So, you know, that's
Yeah,
what I've
sometimes you
been
need a
doing.
palate cleanser.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
do. You
I
really
find
do.
that a lot too. Like, I mean, I'll be sitting there drawing Bigfoot for the 850 millionth time, and then be like, "Man, should I draw something different today?" Like,
Right.
maybe, maybe I'll mess around with something different. Maybe I won't even draw today. Maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll
Yeah,
go
right.
outdoors.
Right. And like having that kind of freedom to do that, because I think I might have been able to keep the podcast going had I not pigeonholed myself so much, and like, you know, decided to stay within that UFO kind of milieu. But there's really no getting out of it once you're in that kind of corner. Like, um, unless you want to do a total rebrand, and at that point, I'm like, nah, that's
Yeah.
good. We're good here. And now I am working on the third outline for my book, which is um like, I'm getting better at writing outlines. Let's just put it like that. So once you get good at writing outlines, you get to struggle at writing the actual thing, and then you get to get better at it. So
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
No, it's definitely a process for sure. No, the
oh yeah.
having that flexibility is key. And my favorite book about like just creative stuff in general is, excuse me, called The War of Art, and it's by Stephen Pressfield, and I
Mm,
recommend everyone. It's super short. It's like 90 pages or something, maybe a little bit longer, but it's a really quick read, and it makes you just want to fucking make stuff, and it gives you so many good little tips, and like there's a lot of little stuff about resistance, and like I mean that's the big thing about the book is resistance, and how, you know, what we're feeling resistant towards making is what we should be working on. But he has this whole
mhm.
part about how you have to be rigid enough to show up at the drawing table or the typewriter or the computer or whatever it
Yeah.
is, whatever your craft is. You have to be rigid with yourself to show up every day and be available for the ideas or the muse or whatever it is. But at the same time, you have to be flexible enough to allow yourself to go for a walk instead that day, or allow yourself to you know, sit in a different room and draw, or draw in the park,
Mm,
or like you have to give yourself some flexibility within that, because novelty is part of where that like creativity and everything comes from. So it's this mix again, it's this paradox where like you have to have structure, you have to be, you know,
yeah.
rigid and responsible, and like you're gonna write for 5 hours a day no matter what, and it might suck, and it might like nothing good might
Yeah.
come from it, but you wrote for 5 hours, and like if you do that consistently, the good stuff comes. And I think that's important to have, as long as you have that other side of the mindset where like you have to be able to be loose with it too, and allow yourself the play and the walks and all the other things. Because if you're only the one or the other, then the stuff, it just, you can tell it just doesn't work. But yeah.
Yeah, it's it is a weird balancing act, because like you do have to have that stiff and rigid structure of, okay, I need to do this for so many hours a day. And like, for me, the one thing that I struggle with sometimes is figuring out what is it that I need to do right now.
Mhm.
Because like my brain wants me to, like, no, you need to write right now, and it's like, no, I need to kind of gather my information to figure out what kind of information I need to put into this book that is ultimately going to be satisfactory to my brain. Because I can write the book in my head, I can write it right now and it'll be okay. But gathering as many perspectives as you can really helps with it because, like, I know all of the, I pretty much know all the cases that are going to be in it.
Mhm.
There are very few that I'm like finding on, and here's the weird thing is like, you kind of with this book, when it eventually comes out, it's going to hit like the major beats of humanoid encounters. And the thing is like I know them all like by heart. So like now it's all about the theory. So it's like, okay, well, let's find articles about written by guys about why humanoids are seem unlikely given, you know, the evolution of everything in the universe. Why won't they show up like us on other planets and stuff? And it's basically kind of getting into that theory a little bit before I get into the other stuff because like I could just write a halfway decent book about all these humanoids and the ways that I see them, but like to have a deeper understanding is like the struggle.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, we need a little deeper understanding here. And the nice thing is like the stuff that I'm reading is kind of helping me to find those sources. So like
Mhm.
I have been reading Encounters with UFO Occupants by Coral and Jim Lorenzen, which is a really fun kind of like 400-page book that is a really good rundown of like humanoid encounters from 1947 all the way up to about 1976. And
Okay.
they were in like the beginning when they were talking about kind of like the nature of um UFO research. They were dropping these articles. I was like, okay, I got to get my hands on these articles because they're like scientists talking about like what extraterrestrial life and stuff would kind of look like. So that's been the fun struggle. So like like if anybody ever sees me on the street, I'll be carrying a backpack that's way too heavy for anybody to really be carrying and going to the library and yeah, just kind of like researching, what extraterrestrial humanoids should look like and what they shouldn't look like and all that kind of weird stuff. It's a fun process to figure out how to do something when you feel called to do it, even though you
Mhm.
never have done it in that way before. Like when we first kind of started out doing Welcome UFO People, I had imposter syndrome real hard because again you do a lot of the heavy lifting and I understand where my part comes into it, but then I put it into the perspective of it's like, oh no, he's like taking the stuff that's in my mind and he's putting it into a concrete form, so you're actually seeing what I'm putting down on the page. It's just a different way
Yeah.
that you're seeing it, so you're seeing it in like pictograph form, whereas Todd's seeing it in how can I describe this to you, as best as I can, what's in my
Yeah.
head and what's in my mind right now. And I think after that point, it became an easier process to do. Um, and like, I think the one thing that I've never been incredibly happy about is kind of the way that I approach the text of all of these issues. And it's not to say that it's bad. It's in line with what you find in UFO reports, which is kind of what I was going for. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I'm like, man, I could have been a little more creative with this. you
Well,
know?
that's what our next project's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And I mean, a few things. One, like I feel like there's this built-in thing in comics, and it is like a real thing where like in mainstream comics, like the writing takes way less time than the like when you're in that
Mm.
factory of comics, that shit actually matters. What we're doing, none of that shit matters. Like we're doing this for fun. Like neither of us are making money off this. This is just us both like, you know, drawing what we love to draw and writing about what we love to write about. And I feel like even when you go back to things and like, you know, I would 100% say up front before I say what I'm about to say that I'm Camp Kirby and he's the king
Mm.
and like did everything. But those comics are special because it's Stan and Jack. Like those comics would not be what they were without Stan, no matter how much less of hours he's putting into that shit than Jack did. Like Jack put his heart and soul and everything into it, and Stan may not have done the same, but what he contributed made those comics what they are and made that shit very special. And like I think that's what's special. Like this is the only comic I've ever really collaborated with somebody on as far as like writing and like usually I just do it all myself because I do think there's like some inherent really special thing about that part of being a cartoonist where the whole thing is just one person's view and words and draw. Like I really think that's something that you can't get out of most narrative art forms where it's just one voice. But with this project, it's the perfect example of where comics in a collaborative form make so much sense, because I would never be able to tell these stories the way they're told in this book without your knowledge and writing abilities and everything else. And it is what it is because it's both of us. So like, you know, so don't worry about imposter syndrome is a thing forever, no matter what. I don't think anybody I've talked to, no matter how big they are or how successful they've become, doesn't have a little bit of that in there. But the other thing I wanted to say about the book stuff that you're working on, to just hop back real quick, because I think that's all beautiful and like I totally agree and love it. But to play devil's advocate for a minute, and something that I think would be in a line with like what Stephen Pressfield would say in the War of Art book is like, what if you have to write that book that you know you could write right now to get to the other book? Like, what if you didn't do all the research and you just sat down and you wrote that book that's in your head and heart right now, and maybe no one ever sees it? Maybe that just goes in a file and that just never, but that maybe that's the way to get to that place where you feel like you're ready to do the big book. And that's weird to say to somebody else that like, because I've never sat down and wrote a book that's like, you know, hundreds of pages or anything. But I've listened to a lot of authors talk and a lot of writers talk at this point. And one thing that I have noticed that I think is fucking crazy is they all just have a lot of books that were written and no one ever sees. Like they wrote like whole fucking books that go in a trash can. And I'm like, that seems insane to me to spend that much time. Like I just can't. I probably put everything out. Like there's nothing where I'm like, nope, no one sees. Like very little. Am I like, you know, I don't have. Maybe I should have a better filter. I don't know. But like that's wild to me to think of writing like a whole novel and just throwing it out and like starting over and whatnot. But like it is interesting to me, the more that I was telling you before about how I've been really into doing comics where I'm going straight in ink, and like one of the results, like you said, Jonathan, when the nib catches and that ink like I've probably thrown out like 6 pages at this point that were like half to 75% fully done that become unsavable, and about like 3 of those weren't like a physical mess up. It was like, oh, this page doesn't work with the story anymore. I need something new, but I didn't plan this out. So now I have to like redraw it completely. So I kind of get it. But again, it's not like 500 pages that I just wrote. It's just one like 8.5 by 11 page that I, you know. So, but yeah, I just, that popped into my head and I wanted to circle back and say, you know, not that you're doing it wrong or that my advice should be taken or anything, but
there's definitely something to be said for kind of just jumping in and doing something.
Yeah.
And
it's also
like
kind of selfish because I just kind of want to
thinking about it.
yeah, I just kind of want to read that book too. So it's also kind of selfish. Like I kind of want to read the book that you're talking about. Like this book that you have in you right now. Like that kind of got me excited when you were saying that. So, but yeah, you know, I think whatever and whenever it comes out, it's going to be perfect and amazing. I'm really excited. I'm excited that because I think this is something that a lot of people don't talk about is and maybe this is my own weird theory, but I feel like creativity, there's only so much of it we all have at our ability to use in one day, let's say. Like, really, it's endless. Like, I do think, there's endless vast of creativity in the humans. Like, the imagination just goes and goes and goes. But performing creatively is like a very big energy suck. Like, I can have a lot of ideas for drawings or comics in a day, but I can only draw so many panels. I can only do so many illustrations, because like the physical execution of creative stuff, it takes a lot out of you, even though you're just sitting at a drawing table or you're sitting at a computer and all of that stuff, right? So like, it definitely, it's it's an emotional drain, right? So podcasting does that. Like, it takes up that create. So it's really awesome that you're taking control of your creative life and saying, no, I don't want to use my creative energy in this anymore. I'm going to make this book that I've always wanted to make, and I'm going to do more Welcome UFO People and these things that, like, you're scratching the same itch, but you redirected that energy. And I don't think I think people get stuck in their medium or their thing, and they're just like, this is what I do now forever. Where a lot of people, it's like, you should just start making comics like you did, Jonathan. Like, I was so stoked when I saw you make that comic. Like, I think everybody should make zines. Like, I think that's like something that everybody should try at some point in their
so much
life.
fun.
Right.
It was
And it's
seriously
so
much
easy.
fun.
Like, right. It's so, like, to print things these days is so easy. Like, whether it's on a photocopier at Staples or fucking FedEx these days, because Kinko's isn't a thing anymore, or doing a local print shop, or, I mean, these books were printed by Mixam, which is, I will say, a very easy to use website and reliable for the most part, except for Jonathan's covers, which they are blaming on they're blaming on Labor Day, but sure, whatever. But yeah, or find a local printer like Jonathan did, or like I got these printed. But it's so easy to print stuff. And even when we're talking about doing the graphic novel and these longer form projects, one of the ways that you can make those things more viable now is to break them down in chapters and do floppies every couple months. So if you have a graphic novel that's going to take you 5 years, you can release 4 floppies throughout a year that are 25 pages a pop, and you can get people excited and reading it. And like, or you could wait and just do it all at once. But like, I just love that those options are available, and how easy it is to make physical stuff still. Like, I think that's like the most exciting part about getting these books is these things never existed outside of an iPad, and now they do. And that,
Right.
even though there's only 100 of them total, that's awesome. That's all I need. Like, I'm a physical media person, so just having those makes it real to me. I mean, it was always real because we made it, but like, now it's real. You can like hit somebody with it.
I could slap you in the face with my book. Yeah,
exactly.
Rob, are you gonna self-publish, or are you gonna be shopping it out to try to get it published by a publishing house?
I don't know. Like, part of me wants to shop it out but I don't know. I don't know if there's a market for that. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and it's an option to have. But one of the things I remember talking with Todd about is one of my favorite things is there. If you Google it, it's this image that Joe Nickel had made. It's called Joe Nickel's Alien Timeline. And what I want to do is I kind of want to do that for this book and have it be at like the centerpiece. So like the way that the timeline is broken down by year, year and pretty much mostly decade. And I kind of want to do that for all of the ones that I have in mind and have this like kind of like cool centerpiece for it.
Sounds awesome.
I know of like certain publishers that are out there that like I don't know if they'd be willing to do stuff like that, because it seems like when it comes to their paranormal books and stuff, they try to do it on the cheap. And it's like, if I'm going to do this, I'm probably going to do it myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like preparing for that in my head. But I mean, like, if Charles Hickson can, publish his own books, I could do it too. It's no problem.
I just Googled the alien timeline. That is intense. I love that so much. That is so cool.
Yeah, when Rob sent that to me, I probably stared at it for like 3 hours. That I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah,
this
I'm gonna
is
have to go through this one with a fine tooth comb. This looks
The
so
totally."
sad
cool.
thing, the sad thing is I know what all those aliens are on that thing.
I could probably name a few of them.
No, that's there. I mean, I feel like this is a great time, like for you to be working on this book, and there is more. I mean, not only like the more, mainstream popularity of aliens and weirds, but there's more hunger for historical content than ever. And like what you do is
Mm,
so much more in lines of that than like, what I think of when I think of a lot of paranormal current books that come
Definitely.
out and stuff. Like I almost see yours as more of a textbook in my brain than like
yeah.
it's like you should talk to Abrams or something. I don't know how people do stuff like that, but like that's like you should probably go shoot above, like not throwing shade on any of the smaller paranormal publishers at all, but like I feel
Mm,
like what you're going to be doing could be in a much like it could be something that's bigger and put out in a different format, and because there is something to like that like academic approach that's not from an academic, because there's a lot of like really overly academic books about the UFO stuff out there these days, like where like you just kind of you're like, what the fuck is this even saying? Like I don't understand any of this. But like you're approaching it in this way could be really interesting too, because you kind of have the best of both worlds.
yeah. I just finished reading Greg Egan's After the Flying Saucers Came, it just came out this summer, and it's an academic, it's definitely an academic book, but it does a great job of kind of getting the global picture of UFOs and like the people that were involved in investigating it. Like it definitely there's a lot of focus on American stuff just because like, Americans have been all up in this shit since the beginning, but
That's
like
what we
he does
do.
a yeah, basically. But he does a great job of like going around to other countries and, seeing what their UFO groups are doing and stuff. And like he lays out a really great history. And I appreciated how in depth he kind of got with the contactees and with the abductees. They're kind of two distinct sections in the book. But yeah, like there's this kind of like history in my head, and yeah, I think I just kind of just need to go for it at this point. So you know,
No.
I find also that as I mean, and we're all creators, like
mm,
me and Todd do drawings and you do writing. So I mean, but it's all creating, and I think that
mm,
we kind of like go as creators, kind of go through like cycles, like of consuming and then creating, and consuming and
Mhm.
mm,
creating, and sometimes you go back and forth, a bunch of times um, before you can actually, put out something that you're proud of. So I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know, it's just
No,
something I notice, pretty
100%.
mm,
recently.
It's really funny because I was thinking about this the other day, because I've been working on tons of comics, and like I was like, oh shit, I haven't actually read a comic in a long time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I don't really need, like, it's all in there. It's so internalized at this point that like it's just it comes out that way. But like it is good to stop and be like, oh yeah, buy some books and read some books, new comics, like new. And same thing with like I just was a TV kid. I was like, and that's when I look at like what I'm working on now. I'm working on a few things that are more like just very short stories. I'm going for short fiction is what I'm going for with these couple of new comics that I'm working on right now, and they're just like 30-minute TV show, like sitcom TV show. I'm like, oh yeah, that's all my brain knows. Like it's just these are Simpsons episodes, but now in comics with like worms and UFOs instead of people. Like that's like essentially like it's so funny because that consuming, I really do think there's something to like what we consume at certain times in our life is it just defines the way that we process culture, like that 12
mhm,
year old to like 16 or so, like that is still like when I think about when I step back and look at my work, whether it's the music I play or the art or the comics or any of the stuff, I'm like, oh, I can like draw direct lines to the things I discovered between 12 and 16 all the way through. And it's just like my brain never got past there or whatever. It's just like stopped. The way I dress, everything. It's just like, oh yeah, that happened. For better or for worse. But you're right. It is all these cycles of consuming and output, and like you kind of have to take stuff in. It's really important. Are y'all
Yeah.
reading any? Are you guys reading anything good right now?
Yeah. When I had this the idea that I brought to you, the one thing that I was reading is Fred Van Lente's comic book history of comics.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome. Yes.
that kind of like, oh wow, if we did this in this format, that
Yes.
would be cool. That would be,
Totally.
yeah.
That I think there's definitely something to those.
I just got the David Mazzucchelli Batman Year One
Yeah.
artist edition book.
Oh,
I'm
damn.
loving
Dude,
those.
it's
Yeah.
insane. Like,
Dude,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
and I guess this isn't so much reading as it is just poring over, giant, art boards,
Mhm.
done by this master. But like it's been like so inspiring. Like just
Oh yeah.
and the book is huge. It's like the size of a small coffee table. Like you open it
Yeah.
up. Like I don't even like my house is so tiny. I don't really have a spot that I can like open it other than my bed. So I just like throw it on my bed and like open it up and just like look at everything. It's so cool.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Mazzucchelli's artwork is so good for that. Like the one of the best masters for sure. That's so
Yeah.
cool. That's definitely. I haven't had a good so I have like what's behind me is what's left of my like comic graphic novel collection, and then my buddy Timmy has the rest of it. Cause we kind of would buy things together when we used to go shopping, and we used to drop way too much money on comics and graphic novels, and it was like right when like people were really putting. I got into comics heavy in like 2004 to 2008, which was like the graphic novel boom when like Chris Ware and like all of the stuff was like people were putting a ton of money into the production of graphic novels and comics and
Yeah.
oversized books, and the artist editions started. So we've dropped a lot, but he got to keep most of it because I don't have space for it, just like you, John. So I'm my selection's much more pared down, but they all exist down the road for me to go visit. I have two of the artist editions. One is it's not really an artist edition, it's a Will Eisner portfolio. That's probably my favorite thing to look at, and it's the same thing. It's like oversized, like I can't even keep it in the garage. It's up in my room, and I do the same thing. I just like lay it all out on the floor like a little kid. I'm like, ooh, this is so much fun. But yeah, that's awesome. So good.
Yeah. And I think it's like fascinating that like DC Comics is now releasing those compact comics. So
I love that.
like you're basically, yeah, it's like your mass market paperback version of a graphic novel, which is great.
It's what we've missed forever as like a comic culture. Like if you look at other cultures and the way they interact with comics, especially like in Japan and like the way that they read manga over there and stuff, it's disposable media. It's these little like, $5 to $10 like giant phone books that you read and then you're done with. You just throw them out or you give them to somebody, and like that, like that's the part we always missed about like what comics were. It's supposed to be this kind of cheap, low, dirty thing that you can just like get an experience and like move on with. So yeah, I was really stoked when I saw them start putting those out. I haven't bought any yet, but I want to. Like even though I own all of the stories that they've put out so far, it's still just is something that is cool to see it in that format. I just got done reading this one, which was like heartbreaking but amazing. It's this really, really beautiful lithograph printed comic from one of my new friends who does a publishing company in Florida called Paper City, and he just put this out. And the artist is amazing, and it's one of the most heartbreaking comics I've ever read. But it's beautiful, and the illustrations are just like so. They're exactly like I wish I could be this loose with things and like just kind of this raw, and I don't know, they're just beautiful. It's really good. I just finished that and this Grog and the Frog, which was super fun. This book is just ridiculous fantasy nonsense that I really love. It's got a froggy that you follow the whole thing. So I've been reading those, and
awesome.
just finished Jeff Kripal's new book, How to Think Impossibly, which was awesome. There's there's a real theme of people writing about imagination and creativity that from authors that I really love, and he definitely, yeah, nailed it. It's a really good book. I highly recommend everyone to check it out. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been messing with these days. And then lots of kids books. I've been reading. He started second grade, so he's he's fully reading himself now. So we read a lot, and he likes he gets their everything's a giant series. Like every kid's book now that's in the like kids chapter books, there's like 30 million of them. So he reads this one called Bots that is really ridiculous, but it's just about a couple robots that hang out and do silly things. So we read lots of those.
A friend of mine actually just put out a kid's book yesterday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, his name's Todd Sturgill, and he put out a book yesterday called Dinosaurs in Space, which is
I love it.
Yeah, which is as amazing as it sounds. You know,
that's amazing. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh man, but so like what if if you could work on any project, like anything in your mind right now, like anything at all, like anything that you would need like the money to do, what would it be? Because like I've been thinking about that a lot lately. It's like, okay, what would be the biggest thing that I can do? But I'd be curious to know, what is the biggest project that you conceivably want to do that maybe you can't at the moment, but is in the back of your head.
Well,
Jonathan, you want to go first on this one?
I'll go first, and like I said before, I can't talk a ton about it, but like this graphic novel that my brother and I are writing right now, and in the very early stages of putting out, like concept art and character designs and stuff like that, like that would be where I would want to put my money right now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really awesome. I'm so I don't think I have two things that I would love, right? Like one, I really have been into doing giant paintings, and I've done a few I've been really lucky to have a few commissions recently, and I'm doing 2 art shows this fall. I have one that's doing a little opening on Friday locally at this venue called The Queen. They do like a first Friday art loop thing in downtown Wilmington, so it's a part of that, and it should be pretty cool. I'm doing it's like a split show with my buddy Bobby, who I've made comics with forever. It's just an awesome artist. I'm excited about that. And then I've been doing kind of these giant like 6-foot wooden paintings for a couple people that have paid me to do, like, I don't know what they're doing with them, but they paid me to do these giant paintings, right? I guess they're hanging them somewhere. But I was like, oh, I want to make big stuff. So like I do a lot of these woodcuts. Like, oh wait, I have headphones on. I do a lot of these guys, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
I want to make like 12-foot versions of this.
Hell
essentially.
Yeah.
So like if I had all the money, I would get a studio space that has giant roofs and get giant pieces of wood and make ridiculously big woodcuts, and then do some sort of like, I would love to do an installation somewhere where I could build like a fake room with inside a room and just like design everything in that room, like have everything essentially be like how I would draw it and make it a whole, interactive type deal is what I've been thinking about a lot. But I only have this very little space in my garage, and you saw how hard it was for me to even get out of my chair to go pick that woodcut. My garage, like if you could see it, I don't know how much I can do this way.
Todd, are you familiar with Wayne White?
Oh yeah,
I love his work with like the giant puppets and
yes, 100%.
They're so cool, like huge marionettes and everything. They're so wild. They're like made out of cardboard and paint, and they just have like really genius mechanisms to them. They're so cool.
Yeah, dude, when I see stuff like that, it's so inspiring to me, and just the type. it's the type of stuff where I'm like, I don't know how they do that. I couldn't do that, and that gets me excited. Like, there's two things. It's funny because like my favorite stuff, especially from an art side, when I look at a book and like when I know something's really good, I look at the book and I'm like, oh, I need to put this down and go draw. Like, I need to, like, when
Yeah.
something gets me that
Yeah.
Mhm.
amped, like, I know that's how I know something really hit with me. But the other side of that is when I see something like that, I'm like, I can't do that. I want to go do something cool though. And I want to just go make some random shit. And like, I've been trying to kind of push myself a little bit here and there. I've been doing a lot of clay work with the kids. Like, I use the kids as an excuse to mess with a lot of stuff that I wouldn't really like. I started doing the woodcuts because Teddy wanted to do Halloween decorations and he wanted me to make him, like, you know, certain things. And I was like, I'll figure out how to do some woodcuts. And I mean, I'm not handy at all. Like, I don't fix shit around the house. I don't like our our back door knob has been broken for like a year because I just don't know how to replace. I tried to replace the doorknob. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, this should not be this complicated. And I just gave up and have not readdressed it. Right, but I can cut shapes out of wood really, and I can do that okay. So, but yeah, I want to do stuff like that and just make like giant ridiculous things that have no purpose. The other thing is just like I would love to have a risograph printer or a risograph, however you want to say it. But the printer that made this book, they're like somewhat affordable, but mainly it's a time investment to learn how to work them, and they break
Yeah.
pretty often, and there's not really anyone that
Mm.
services them, so you have to learn how to fix them too. And I just referenced how unhandy I am at fixing anything, so that's probably. But if I had all the money and didn't have to worry about that type of stuff, I would buy one of these and a giant studio space, and I would make giant woodcuts and lots of comics.
I dig that.
Yeah,
I
I think
definitely
that.
dig that.
How about you? Did you come up with an answer for yourself when you were thinking about that?
Oh yeah. I've had probably about 3 or 4 different novels kicking around my head, like ideas that aren't nonfiction that I want to take a stab at eventually. I want to do the nonfiction first just because I think it'll be an easier entry into writing something that's longer. But there are, I started with writing short stories probably about 12 years ago. Um, and I was okay at it, and then I just kind of moved away from it, and UFOs just consumed my life for like 10 years, and now that I've kind of freed myself of that content creation stuff, it's now like, okay, well, maybe these things are possible because like um I am the writers that I admire, guys like George Saunders. Um, um, I really love David Sedaris's essays, and Joshua Ferris,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's a lot of like funny writers out there, and it's like I wanna I wanna write about things in a funny way. So yeah, novel writing is good is kind of my it's my white whale at this point, but
That's
it's a
awesome.
white whale that I think I can take care of, and I don't even need to read Moby Dick.
Dude, short stories, short fiction is my favorite thing. Like, whether it's comics or short
Hmm.
prose or like, I mean, still, it's got to be top five. Might be number one. Nine Stories by Salinger
Hmm.
is still like one of my, like, that was one of the books that I read like in high school at some point and was like, oh, this is what a book is. Like I
Hmm.
I think it's the first story, the banana, a perfect day for banana fish. Like, that
Yeah.
story, so good. But yeah, short stories when they hit, it's like nothing else. And like you have to, it's such a weird medium because you have to kind of start where like there's so much understood and you're just kind of like right in the middle of it and there's no room for any, I don't know, build up or it's really, it's when people do it well, I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever
And
experienced. But
sort of
there's
the other side of that coin too, though, like something that came into my brain while you were talking there was there's a short stories by Hemingway called the Nick Adams stories, and it's basically, I don't know if you guys have read those, but it's basically like a sort of his childhood almost, but
oh
sort of
no,
like
I haven't read those.
he like based it on like a bunch of people together, but in kind of like his own experiences as well. So it's all fiction, but it has like I don't know, like a note of truth to it as well to him. And
Mm.
what he does sometimes is he'll just drop you in the middle of a story and not give you any explanation of where this person's been or where they're going or anything like that, but just like, just drop you in the middle and doesn't give a fuck if you know anything about it. Just he wants to tell the
Yeah.
story, and that's what you get basically.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to just trusting the reader and letting them, like, it's what took comics so long to get over, is not like infantize what not
Yeah, yeah.
treating not treating the readers like they're dummies, like being like they can
Right.
pick up on this and they can figure it out. We don't have to like lay this out every panel, and like, I think that there's a lot that has become common in writing these days, where they're just assuming they're writing for the lowest common denominator, and you're just kind of
Mm.
like, yeah, we can be trusted with a little bit more than that.
Yeah. I think the one story that I always go to as being like one of the best examples of short story writing is a story called Pop Art by Joe Hill.
I haven't read
Um,
that.
it's Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so like
Oh, okay.
um it's in this horror story collection that he has, but it's not a horror story. It's a really touching story about a kid who has a medical condition that is absurd on the face of it, which is that the boy is inflatable. So like, but like it turns into this gut punch later on, and it's so good. Um, the one collection that I recommend to people who particularly like, weird stuff like us and like cryptids and stuff is a book called What the World Will Look Like When All the Water Leaves Us. It's by Laura Vandenberg. And she has a story in it in which has the character has a job of dressing up as Bigfoot and scaring people in the woods. Like people are
Amazing.
being, paying for this experience, So
Amazing. I
yeah.
love that. That's so
But
cool.
there's a few cryptid stories in there and they're pretty good. But yeah, like there's a certain art to short fiction that like it's harder to do than something longer because like you can just kind of like go on and on
Yep.
and
Mhm.
on with something until you kind of get it right. But with short fiction, it kind of needs to hit right, or it's just like it's an okay story, but yeah, there's just something special about it. But yeah, like definitely go check out Laura Vandenberg. She's got great stories.
I think, yeah, that's I'm gonna have to take you up on those recommendations. But I think as far as being creative, it's good to stretch all those muscles. Like it's good to force
Mhm.
yourself to write short stories and to kind of go without any limitations and whatnot. Like one of the things that I love about like comics in general is that there are these inherent limitations, or just book printing. Like when you're thinking comics, and Jonathan, you probably thought about this recently, you have to think in fours. Like everything's this signature of fours, and like
Mhm.
now I guess you probably didn't have to deal with the pagination stuff, did you? Like you didn't have to worry about like where
I
the
think
first page went,
I kind of
so that the
backdoored it a little bit because I made that,
the zine
the
part.
hard
Yeah,
copy zine.
exactly.
So then,
Yes,
like,
no,
I took it all apart, and I was like, okay, well, this
exactly.
page goes here, and this page goes here, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of mind-boggling at first because I'd never really done anything like that.
So
But
most
and there's probably a way better way to do it, but
No, I do it that so like I still do it the same way, Jonathan. I photocopy, or I just use my little laser copier, and I copy everything, and I make a little dummy booklet, and then I put that dummy booklet into InDesign if I'm printing them myself. But now most printers, they don't need it paginated. Like when I uploaded this to Mixam, the PDF's just like front cover, first page, second page, third page, fourth page. Like you don't have to worry about like putting the stuff in order. And when I found that out, I was like, whoa, the world is magic. That's amazing. Because yeah, it kind of breaks your brain when you're like, wait, so the first page and the last page and the inside, you're like, this is all on the same page. Hold on, what is happening? And
I think we're just like really visual though. Like we want to be able to hold it and like see it like
yes,
right off the bat. And
yeah,
I don't know, that helps me kind of like, go through the motions, I think, is when I can, see it in that form, that raw form.
Yeah, no, I never knew any of the names for these things until using InDesign, because they use like pagination and these. And it's funny because they're all like stage names, like they're all like they're really interesting to think about the where they came from. I don't know the etymology, but I bet it's from some sort of stage thing or performance or something like that. But yeah, no, it's super fun. I think that there's so many ways, because the other thing I'd love, have you ever made like just like the little 8.5 by 11 like single sheet of paper zine? Have you ever done these guys? These are like sorry babies that are babies that are sleeping inside. So this was like the first type of zine I ever made. I just did that presentation on a Nomicon.
Yeah, the Nomicon. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So like you just take one piece of paper, and what you do is you fold it in half. This a ways, and you cut it in the middle, right? So it makes this weird shape, and then you can fold it like this, and it becomes one little book. So it's like front cover, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and there's no staple or anything. It's just a little zine that you can give away for free.
Awesome.
And zero.
Dude, I'm definitely gonna do that. I'm gonna sell some stuff like that.
So there's a template,
like quarter ones or something. That'd be cool. People buy that.
If you Google 8.5 by 11 zine template, it'll give you a template so you can see where the first page, because that's kind of confusing. But other than that, it's super simple. And yeah, I mean, what I used to do at comic shows, and I'm going to do one for this. I'm doing the Small Press Expo next weekend, which is the first like real comic show I've done in a long time. But it'll be super fun. I'm going to screen print a bunch of these guys. So I burned a screen, and I'm just going to screen print a bunch and fold them to kind of sell for $1. I think I'm just going to do a pay what you want for them or something like that.
Nice,
but yeah. I just look, so there's like a million different forms of this too. Like you can do accordion versions of that. Like there's so many. It's like when you start incorporating the origami paper folding art into all of this, it's a whole other world. And there's so many cool things you can like. There's
That's awesome.
I don't have my book bag out here. I have an accordion zine inside, but I don't have it out here. But they're really cool. Yeah, making stuff.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm gonna have to start doing that now too. Actually, one thing that I bought like a while ago that I've kind of had the itch to just like kind of do is like I bought a sketchbook, some pencils, and some erasers, and just kind of like, hey, let's just do something here. Let that creativity flow. So I think that's one thing that might help with my own like creative endeavors, is just like being able to do something different to get me out of like the normal headspace, because I think you can kind of get bogged down if you can't like change either your medium or like the kind of what you're used to doing. And that's one thing that I want to give a shot to. So like I'm in this process of creating a, not necessarily a strict, but I want to try to become disciplined every day to the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to journal. I'm gonna journal for like a few like hours or an hour a day, and then write, and then on days where I need to kind of get out of my head and not do that, hey, let's sketch something, see what happens.
I want to see the next iteration of this book be, you doing the cartooning and Todd doing the writing.
I love it. I'm in. I'm so in. This is a great idea. Yeah,
I'll give you
I'm
my, I'll
game if
give you
you
my
are.
notes. I'll give you my outline.
I think it's perfect. No, that's the type of stuff that definitely goes a long way. I've even tried to do things like I was saying earlier, like go straight without pencil, but I've also tried to do a lot of things where I'm just doing things I'm not good at, and I've
Mhm.
like clay working has been a big one that I've been trying to play around with a lot, and man, it's way harder. Like you watch these YouTube videos of people making this stuff, and you're like, that looks easy, I can do that. And I try and make a little goblin, and it comes out like completely deformed and just like not at all what it's supposed to. But it's really fun to have that feeling of just being bad at something again too. Like it's something
Right.
that like you tend to like defend yourself from as you get older. Like you cut out those things, you're like, nah, that's not my thing, that's not my thing, this is my thing. But then you
Yeah.
realize that like doing the things that aren't your thing make you better at the thing that is your thing somehow.
Exactly. Like success comes from failure. It doesn't come
Yeah.
from, being fully formed out of the gate. Like even when you're writing, if you don't give your words a chance to suck on the page, they can never be good. Like
Yeah.
you just got to let them be like the absolute fucking worst, because you can come back later and just like re-edit that shit and make it sound a whole lot better. But like in a society that we live in that kind of prioritizes perfection, because it like you get the final product, you don't see what goes into it most of the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Like it's important to understand that you're going to fail. You're going to
Yeah.
fail a bunch of times, and there's nothing wrong with failing. It's just you kind of got to keep going after the failure. Don't let the failure consume you, but like fail and have fun failing.
There's a lot to
Because
learn there too. A lot to
yeah,
learn in failing.
Well,
there really is.
and like if something doesn't work or if you failed at something, then that's really just one less thing you have to worry about. Like that's the thing, like you just move on and you can just keep doing it and you don't have to worry about it anymore because it's done. You didn't work, it's fine, just keep going. I think
Mhm.
there's something to one, it's super interesting because I think there is something to living in a time, not only like you were saying, where people see a lot of finished products and not the stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor, or whatever you want to call it. But
Mhm.
when you do see the behind the scenes stuff, it's as curated and manicured as the final product. So like even when you're seeing people doing like process videos and things like that, it's as fake. It's not they're not real process. It's not like someone really is just sitting there. Like it's either time lapse so you can't really see what's going on, or it's very edited and segmented and so it's very rare that you actually get to see a not like curated version of the making, and then you get to see this other. It's a really weird thing that didn't exist for a long time and now probably confuses people a lot and makes people think that things are a lot easier than they are. But it is really cool, like even with my kids, like seeing the amount of things they want to try because they saw it like on YouTube or whatever. It's way more than I was exposed to growing up. Like we're doing like Teddy wants to try oil pastels. I'm like, I didn't know what an oil pastel was when I was 8. This is awesome. Sure, we can get a set of oil pastels and sit here and draw for a while. So like there is something to it, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Man, we've been at this for like an
Oh
hour and a
wow.
half.
It really,
My
I
God.
didn't even realize it'd been that long. That's awesome.
Is anybody watching
Like
this?
that's yeah, there are a few people watching this, which is it's great because like it's just great to like chat with people. Living in my tiny ass town, it becomes hard. So like I appreciate the real interaction.
Right? Yeah, this is really
The
cool. And I love like just talking to you guys because like just within this like hour and a half, I have like an entire window of like tabs open now of like things that I need to check out. And
That's awesome.
I love that.
I'm with
I
you.
love that shit. So thank
And
you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
thanks
Hell
everybody who
yeah.
bought a book already too. I just refreshed the little shop here, and yeah, we've gotten a good amount of orders this last little couple hours. So thank you everybody. That's like super, yeah, very kind. So nice. Lots of
Yeah.
familiar names, which is super nice to see. And yeah, it's nice to sell anything, but when it goes to friends and people that you like their work as well, it means even
Yeah.
more.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been checking the social media, and yeah, there have been a bunch of people ordering, which is it's humbling for one, for people to think that the things that you do are worthy of throwing money at. Like
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Sure, it's not always the goal, but when it is the goal, and when you really need money, can be a form of validation. It's fine,
No, it
it's
absolutely
fine.
is. It is 100% a form of validation, for sure. I
Yeah.
will, and like it really isn't about the amount. Like I said, man, I haven't thought about this in forever, and it's so funny how time passes and feels like it was yesterday. Um, I'm just getting old. But when I started personal folklore like 3 years ago now, which is crazy to think about, which is like my regular zine that I did monthly for a year. The first issue I put out, I probably sold like 15 of them, right? Like nothing crazy. Like it wasn't like I sold enough to be like, this is what I'm doing every month and I'm gonna stick to it. But but
Yeah.
but one of them was John Tenney. And I was like, holy shit, Johnny L.
Yeah.
Tenney bought one. That's crazy. And like at that point, I hadn't interacted with him at all or anything. I loved his work and I loved listening to him on podcasts and whatnot. And I was like, that means something. And then he talked about it when he was on a different podcast, not What's Up Weirdo, but another podcast he was on. They were like, what's making you happy right now? And he brought up my zine. And I was like, that was enough. I was like, okay, like this is something. Like this is something that I want to keep doing now. Like the fact that it resonates, like so it is just like you never know what one person is going to get it and make something. And now I'm like, I don't know. I've probably sold close to like almost 1,000 copies of all of them all together, which like again doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for me. Like that's like I used to
Those little
having.
books are incredible, dude.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
Mhm.
I love
Thank
them.
Thank you means a lot to me. They're little works of exactly what I want them to be, and I think that there's something that I'll never stop doing because I only do it when it's fun for me, and that's the type of thing like you were saying with the podcast, Rob. Like I think there's such a we do ourselves a disservice not listening to that factor. Like if something's not
Mhm.
enjoyable anymore, not that you have
Yeah.
to stop doing everything that's not enjoyable, but if you're doing something that started out as like a passion project and that passion goes, it's okay to bring that project to an end. But this is one of the few ones where like I never feel that and I never want to feel that. So I put them out when I want to now and I make them whatever I want them to be and they're super fun and yeah, it means a lot that people read them. I'm
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I've always loved about your work, Todd, is that um there's always that heartwarming element to it, but it's also has this element that it makes me think, and it does a great job of putting things into perspective, like the larger thing of life. It really
oh,
does put it into perspective, and I love that about your work, and I love seeing it in my feed every day,
thank you.
so
That means a
yeah.
lot to me, man. No, that means it's what I'm very for as much as it's so funny because I think we all like absolutely hate these things, but man, like being able to get feedback like that and just being able to connect with somebody like the fact that us three have known each other just because of these phones and social media,
Yeah.
something's good about it. Like it all is internally or entirely horrible and great at the same time. But that means a lot to me. And like seeing people be, I don't know, it's weird to have a platform that I feel like is at once kind of like sucking my attention from things that need my attention. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, don't look at Black Cube. The kids hang out with the kids. Like stop doing the like but it is so nice that like it allows for those little connections and things like this to exist.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm rambling. It's way past my bedtime too, so I feel like I've gotten
Uh,
really
yeah.
rambly these last this last hour here. So sorry about that.
No, you're good. One thing I want to say, Jonathan, dude, your stuff blows me away every time I see it, dude. It's just so fucking good. It's that
Thank you.
like top level that I respect the hell out of. Like everything that you do is amazing, and it doesn't matter what it is. I remember when you sent me that like joke piece you did after that episode where I said like the ideal place to take an alien on a date is Olive Garden, you know. So
Yeah, dude, that one spoke to me for some reason. I was like, I gotta put this one down.
No, it's
Yeah,
true,
that's fun.
Jonathan. Your stuff is next. You are one of those artists that I love to follow because you do things that I just can't do. Like and
mhm.
that's like I don't know. Like I'm always. It's funny because when I look at even just like my Instagram feed, like who's in there and whatnot, the stuff that sticks out is the stuff that I just can't like physically think of how I would like go about making the image. And like yours
Yeah.
is always at the top of that list where I'm just like constantly like, I want to do that. I don't know how I would do that.
Well,
But
Yeah.
thank
yeah.
you. I mean that means a lot. That's why we put stuff out there, is to try to make an impression. So
Yeah,
um,
no, it's very
I'm
inspiring
stoked to hear
forever.
that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean like we've got a lot of really great artistic friends in our circle, like
Oh yeah,
Natalie Easton
Yeah,
fucking man, that dude, he blows my mind too, the stuff that he
yeah,
puts out. Chris Galliano, also great, you know, just so
no, it's
many.
true.
There are a lot of great weirdo artists out there, and you should definitely buy their art and stuff. And you should definitely,
definitely support us artists.
yeah,
Stop
yeah,
making
for
so much
sure.
Do it.
goddamn AI artwork and
Yeah.
get a
Yeah,
real
Yeah.
artist on something. You know.
exactly.
Because
Go pay a real artist to do something for you. Just go do it. But yeah, you're gonna have to go track Jonathan down for the variant cover for volume 1. It's a really great cover, and you
it's
guys are
amazing.
gonna love it. We're gonna be posting pics soon when those slackers get us our books,
Yeah,
but
put us in your hand.
yeah. But yeah, you track them down for that. You can buy our book. Our book is online. You're able to purchase it. We have a Big Cartel store. I believe it's Big Cartel dash Welcome UFO People, and they're going for $12. We are donating $2 from every book to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So you know, some going to charity, which is always good. You know, if you can help out. So yeah, buy some books. You know you
Mhm.
want to. And gentlemen, thank you for hanging out this evening. It's been a fucking blast, you know.
Yeah, no, thanks for setting this up, Rob, and
There's so
thanks
much
for I
fun.
mean, really, you're the reason this exists. So I know you've given me my my proper flowers this evening, but none of this would be a thing if you didn't message me with the idea. And yeah, so thank you for that for sure. It's
You're the idea man.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely one of those ones that I get a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of times in my artistic career where I said yes to things I regretted saying yes to eventually, and this is not one of them. This has like been one of my favorite projects to work on, and I'm really excited for the next issue. So the next stuff we have in store is going to be a bit different, and I think people are really going to be stoked on it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, to give you an idea, you're not gonna get you're not gonna be getting singular stories per issue now. You're gonna get something that's a little longer form. Still releasing in the same format, but like told over multiple issues as opposed to one. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and the subject matter is you know, paying flowers to the people that deserve them, giving them their flowers and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, thanks to everybody who like hung out with us and just was active in the chat. Steve, I love you, man. Thank you so much for doing the forward to our book, dude, because I love it. Is so great. And CJ Wheelwright and Michael Huntington, thank you all for hanging out with us. We're gonna get the heck out of here, but yeah, go buy the book. Go hunt. Go hunt Jonathan down for his.
Yeah, hit me up.
Awesome.
Night, y'all.
Have a good one, guys. Good seeing y'all.
Good night.
Bye.
Right.